This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's Cass, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
So, anyways, what's up, guys? Saturday morning. I'm missing college game day for this, so it better be good.
Right on.
What?
But your team's not playing, though, right?
It doesn't matter. It's football.
It's college football.
Oh, he tried to shame me last week.
I wasn't trying to shame you. I was just trying to have some fun.
Alabama's going to go beat Michigan in the toilet bowl this year, and it's going to be fine. Yeah, they didn't earn it.
Playing Michigan?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they didn't earn it. Plain and
understand.
simple. They just didn't earn it.
Understand the bowls. I don't understand how they work.
Yeah. We when even as fan is short for fanatic, and we are fanatical about Alabama football, but at the same time,
Yeah, you got to be realistic.
you got to be, yeah, man. And you can get butthurt about referee calls and shit like that, but you didn't earn it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
You lost to a sub 500 Oklahoma team. You lost to Vanderbilt, for crying out loud.
I didn't know that was a Vandy.
Yeah, dude. Like
pretty
the
bad.
Tennessee loss, okay, we can eat that one, but losing to those two other guys, you don't deserve to be in it.
Yeah, that's okay. The Huskies went from being in the national championship to I don't even know if they won a game this year. So
Yeah, well, we stole your coach and all your players.
that's true. Everybody followed you. Followed him to Alabama.
I lost track, but didn't that your quarterback? What was his name?
Penix.
Yeah, didn't he go to the NFL?
Yeah, he's. I think he's starting this week for Atlanta. They finally benched Kirk Cousins because he's been trashed for like the last 5 weeks,
That
and
sucks.
yeah, and which that whole thing was weird because they signed Cousins to like $130 million contract, and then went and drafted him in the first round.
Right.
With like the number 8 or 9 pick overall.
So if you're Kirk Cousins, you kind of see the writing on the wall. You're there too
because you're going to walk away with a buttload of cash.
It wasn't that was kind of the same relationship that Brett Favre had with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Aaron Rodgers comes out of the draft and they're like, okay,
Green
Brett,
Bay.
your job is to train him.
Yeah.
Like we don't care.
Yeah.
You're an old, and that's kind of. But Kirk Cousins was balling in Minnesota.
He was. Yeah.
He had a good coach, good surrounding. Good supporting cast.
Man, we should learn how to throw footballs because you're tall enough.
I can throw a football.
Or kick a football.
I can throw a football once, and then my shoulder will blow up.
I think I saw something like Cousins made like 300-something million over the span of his career in the NFL. He's won one playoff game.
Wow.
It's crazy. That money's
Stupid
crazy.
money, man.
You watched that show Quarterbacks on Netflix?
No.
It's worth the show.
I'll
It's
have to
worth
watch it.
man. It was I want to say it was the 23 season. 22 or 23, whatever. But they followed Kirk Cousins and Patrick Mahomes and a couple of others, Marcus Mariota, which is an interesting story of kind of bouncing back. But Kirk Cousins, man, super humble, super cool family dude. Like, lost a playoff game.
Yeah.
And met his wife in the concourse with his kids and drove home.
Wow.
They just got in their Suburban and drove home. Like, okay, well, I guess we'll go to church tomorrow. And, it was cool. It was just kind of a cool story.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyways, Alicia, welcome.
Yeah.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back, baby.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
think so.
You're doing good.
Because I'm close enough.
Mm-hmm. You're staying close enough.
The fourth time's a charm.
Yeah. Right. I'll
Trainable.
this up just a little bit. Well, for the first couple of minutes while she's thinking about it. And
Yeah,
then
then she'll start. Yeah, it's just start leaning back.
Like, where did I go?
Yeah. No, that's actually the football is actually a good segue into it because all of the Atlanta fans need to learn how to forgive Kirk Cousins for his poor performance on the field this year.
So what about the Seahawks fans?
What about Seahawks fans? It's a rebuild. We're doing all right. We're 8-5 or 8-6.
Yeah,
it'll be okay.
That's Bob Ross painting Pretty Little Trees.
That's right.
Lipstick on a pig, man.
That's right, man.
That's a bird. Yeah.
We'll get there eventually. No, but yeah. So for today, we're going to talk about forgiveness. You and I have talked about doing this one for a little bit, Roscoe, and I think this can be a tricky subject, right? Because one, you've got all the standard platitudes, about why you should forgive people or the importance of forgiveness, this, that, and the other, right? Which got it fine, right? Two, I think typically it's a little more, I think as men in particular, we tend to harbor more resentment sometimes. We like to let things fester and then we hold on to shit for a long time. And I'm sure women do that too. I don't know that it's necessarily gender specific, but
hell hath no wrath.
yeah, right.
Like
but
that.
and if you think about, just popular movies, things like that, it's the revenge piece of things and, getting back at people for what they did to you or whatever the case may be, right? So I just thought that this would be a good topic to talk about because it's not something that I think a lot of us ever think about or ever get a lot of exposure to. And there's some good statistical information that goes along with it.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to talk about today too, because we always talk about the importance of forgiving other people for maybe things they've done to us in life, but we rarely talk about the importance of forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into today. And we brought in our resident expert, Alicia, to help us figure all this shit out.
Right on.
So there we go.
And I always have to disclaim that I'm not like an expert.
Yeah, you are.
Well, you're definitely
you have smarter than us.
You have a computer with a sticky note on it. I have nothing. So
oh yeah,
so you're winning.
My sticky notes to pay him back some money.
Yes.
All right.
Getting some back.
No, but it is. So I mean, what did you guys grow up learning that forgiveness was? What was the messaging you guys got around it?
No, I didn't. I mean, I will say that's wrong. That's incorrect. What I learned about it was probably from church.
Yeah.
And, the teachings from the Bible and what our pastor talked to us about.
Yeah.
But, my parents weren't the type to sit down and talk to me about things like this.
Yeah.
And good or bad, it is what it is. And that's all that it is. But, I don't know if, certainly back when we were growing up, we didn't have the medium like we have now.
We don't. We know. We were talking about that the other day.
We didn't have that transfer of knowledge and the easy access to YouTube videos and podcasts.
Yeah.
And you can type in forgiveness into Google and get 1 million hits in 0.69 seconds, and we didn't have any of that. So it was really, your local group, whoever, maybe your parents or your extended family or your church group or whatever. Absent that, where else are you going to get it when you're, a 1990s kid, 80s and 90s kid,
No, I think there's a lot of generational differences. We were talking about this yesterday, even just from our parents to us to our kids, right? And a lot of that's just because of access of information and how I don't know necessarily that there was a lot of work in the social science aspect or in the psychological aspect that had been done on this stuff when we were growing up, where there's all kinds of stuff about it now, right? That's available and accessible, books that have been written, a bunch of research that's been done. So for me, it was a lot like you, Roscoe, it was forgive and forget, right? Turn the other cheek, kill them with kindness. My mom used to tell me that all the time, kill them with kindness, and it's just like, fuck, what does that even mean? Can I just fucking kill them?
Yeah.
That'd be that would feel a whole
wait a
lot
minute.
better,
So
right?
if you kill them with kindness or you kill them with meanness, they're dead either way. So why don't you just throw a grenade in the room and walk away?
Yeah, but that was the messaging that I got growing up, right? That, you're supposed to forgive and turn the other cheek and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and I would agree with that, right? Very black and white thinking.
Yeah.
It's this or it's this, or it's very simplistic and it's not like most other things in life. I think it's really nuanced and layered and complicated, and we have to sit in a lot depending on what we're forgiving, right? Like everything else, it runs on a spectrum, and depending on what we're forgiving, it's whoa. Sorry, John.
Whoa, hold up! You
I
can't
almost
see
took
me.
You out.
You can't see me. Caleb asked about him last night.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did you tell him about the nipple
Yeah.
ring?
I told him to
that
send a
put on there.
Send a bedazzled John Cena.
He had one on both sides, but the other one fell off.
He's got a nipple ring.
Yeah, he's got a nipple.
Yeah.
Senna did that when she was bedazzling her, I think her face one day.
The Senna there.
Yeah.
Her pepper spray for college.
Oh my god. It is. It's bedazzled.
Yeah. Well, you still can't see it.
Yeah.
You just see one purple reflection of a nipple ring.
That's right.
Refracted reflections.
Well, that's how bad my eyesight is because I didn't even see it.
So I have a question. And everything that you just said was geared. Let's pretend that your parents are telling you turn the other cheek,
Yeah.
kill them with kindness, da 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 da. All right. Well, who's that for? That's my question. And it's gonna come to you. So who is that really for? Is that for your mental health and your well-being, or is that for them and not stirring up shit? What's that for? So my question to the expert here is, when we talk about forgiveness, are we talking about the person that's forgiving or the person that's receiving forgiveness? Because I think there's a big difference there, and I've got some examples that we might be able to go through.
Yeah, I think ultimately what this has shifted and what I talk to my clients about is it's really about, like, I use the term letting go versus forgiveness. It's really about the person letting go of whatever's happened, because in a way we get caught in this dynamic of they're the bad person and I've been wronged or right. Somehow we're still energetically hooked to whatever happened. And so by being able to forgive or let go, we kind of release that energy, so we're not sitting in that turmoil anymore. But if it's somebody you're still having a relationship with, obviously it benefits the other person too, right? Because it can improve your relationship. It can, deepen it, move it forward. But I think ultimately, when we're talking about those really big things like ruptures in relationship, it's how do I move on with my life and not let that person's behavior impact me anymore? That makes sense.
It does. But let's say, I don't know, a hypothetical. Let's say that I accidentally break out your window, right? And you're pissed off about it. Great. And then I call you later on that night and I say, Cass, will you please forgive me for that? What am I really asking for? Am I asking for his, it's okay, whatever? Well, that's, the person who did the wrong on this side is trying to make himself feel better. I don't really give a fuck what Cass thinks. I just want to make myself feel better because I made a mistake or I fucked something up, right? So that goes back to my question. Like when we talk about forgiveness, how are we framing this?
Yeah.
So I would say in what you're talking about, so I love about
Roscoe.
Because I'm a moron and I come up with dumb questions.
No, you don't though. You come up with great questions that I think your listeners are like, yeah, what is that? I think you're so on. No, so, the first thing I would do is, if you were going to go to that extent, is ask you, what's your intention to even bother asking him if he would forgive you. My guess is that you want to make sure your relationship's okay for something like that. Unless it's an empty, hollow, like, ask. It's no different than checking in going, hey man, like, are we okay? Like, sorry about that. But I think, I don't know, like, I kind of lost track of what your question was.
So if we're going to contextualize it for today, like I think the focus is really how your individual ability to forgive somebody else for a wrongdoing, or to forgive yourself for maybe something that you've done wrong.
Okay, so
why that's important.
Let's go with that then,
because that's really what it boils down to. Is because whatever somebody asking you for forgiveness, who knows? Like Alicia's saying, who knows what their intentions may be? If they're a narcissistic fuck, then they're probably just looking to make themselves feel better. If they're a really good friend and they're worried about this being some kind of a wedge in the relationship, then that's a completely different thing, right? And that's where that Alicia was talking about. It's so nuanced. But what I wanted to focus on today is just for individuals, for the ones, like, why is forgiveness important for you from the aspect of you being able to afford forgiving somebody for a wrongdoing, and not somebody that accidentally breaks your window, but an affair, I don't know, you name it, whatever, some kind of really deep emotional scarring that goes on. And so that's how I would like to contextualize it, how it advantages the individual. So,
well, and just going back to your example really quick, though, it still applies, because if you truly forgive him, you're going to let go of the behavior, not hold it in the back of your mind and be like, Roscoe, 10 years later, like, Roscoe broke my window. Like, you know what I mean? You truly are letting it go.
Yeah.
What is that? So what does that mean? What would talk to us about the actual synapses of what that actually means?
Okay.
Well, yeah, go ahead. And then I can give it a great example.
Okay. So I'm talking about like actual synapses because I don't know what that is.
But you know about the psychology behind it and all that. So when I say, all right, fine, sorry, Cass, I broke your window. And Cass says, all right, cool. It's cool, man. No big deal.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, you know, I accidentally kicked the cat and he goes, dude, the fuck, you fucking broke my window. Right. So he clearly didn't let that go. You know what I mean? So what does it mean to like let something go?
Yeah. So it's just that, right? It's like if, you know, we're in a relationship that has meaning and somebody does something wrong, that we truly give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, I get it, right? You were maybe it was an accident, or maybe you're going through a rough time, right? Like, we're all in relationships here, right? So if one of our partners does something, you know, maybe we're hurt, but we come back and we're like, hey, I got it, right? I love you. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, whatever, right? I'm not going to hold it against you. So what it is we're not storing that in our hearts and in the back of our minds and constantly going over it and constantly ruminating or thinking they're a shitty person or just basically stewing in it. I mean, we're really letting go of it and moving on with our lives. It might require us circling back and checking in like, hey, I really need to check in with you around what happened. There might be a further discussion. But I think what you're talking about, Jason, is these moments where we can't do that with people always too, right? That extreme side of when something's so ruptured, we can't heal it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a difference versus getting the opportunity to heal something and really making a choice of, I'm going to let this person's behavior go. And right, it might include boundary setting, right? So I get that's who you are. And I can appreciate that. But with that, I can still like you, but I don't necessarily like your behavior. So maybe I spend less time around you, or I only see you in certain social circles, or we only talk about certain things, but I'm now not sharing really personal things with you because you can't keep them to yourself anymore. Right. So now we're setting appropriate boundaries around the behavior we've been exposed to. So, and I don't know, maybe we need to not have that person as a friend anymore. Right. It just, that stuff depends.
Again, dude, this is where it gets crazy, right? And because it's so nuanced, because, you know, like with Alicia, I'm not going to keep score. I'm not going to go, well, this is the 5th time in the last 3 months that she did this, even though we've talked about it before. Like, right? Like, there's no point in that, right? I love her. We're in a relationship together. I'm going to extend that grace. I'm going to extend that trust. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. Behaviors are hard to change, whatever the case may be, right? Unless it's like something really big, right? Obviously. So the little things here and there are one thing. You know, the deeper ones, I think, are where I kind of wanted to focus in on, because if you've been, you know, really hurt by somebody, it's important to get to a place where you can forgive. And I'll be honest with you, like that timeline for forgiveness is going to be different for everybody. Some people can get to it faster than others. Some people it's more of a process that you have to go through. But the whole point behind it is you're really taking care of your own mental, emotional, physical health by getting to a place where you can do that. And one thing I want to go back to, like Alicia was saying, was what we often don't recognize when, let's say you've been in a relationship with somebody that's hurt you really badly. And maybe you're still in a relationship, but you know, it's led to a rocky patch, you know, or maybe you've decided that, yeah, this person isn't it for me anymore, but they're still in your life for whatever reason. Maybe you share kids together, whatever the case may be, right? If you can't get to a place where you can let some of those things go, then like Alicia was saying, they've got that hook in you, man. It's like a fish on a line, right? And they may slack it out every once in a while, and you start swimming away and thinking everything's good, and then they tug on it a little bit, and you're right back into that emotional shitstorm, right? You're right back into that hurt. You're right back into that pain. You're right back into whatever it was that was done. And then what happens is you end up staying in this dance with this person for much longer than you need to, you know, where their actions, their words, their behaviors impact you at a level that doesn't really deserve that credence anymore. Doesn't really deserve that access to you anymore. You know what I mean? So in some ways, that piece of letting go is more about almost in some ways freeing yourself, not just from the hurt that happened, but from the person involved, right? And the person that they are, right? It's some of it's, again, it's nuance. It's not just, for me, it was never just letting go too. Sometimes it's just accepting people for who they are. Like, you actually see somebody for what they are, what they're about, what they value. And you kind of get an idea of, this is probably how they're going to show up for the world. They're probably not going to change. This is probably how things are going to work with them. And, when you get that clarity, that's where you can really go, okay, well, now I can make some really smart choices based on my own value system of how I want to show them in this relationship with them, right? Because I can go, well, if I know this about them and I'm willing to accept these things about them, then, like Alicia was saying, now I can set appropriate boundaries where maybe I'm only going to see them in certain social settings, or maybe we're only going to discuss certain things, or I'm only going to extend myself for certain things. Or you make it to a point where you go, or maybe I don't really need to ever see or talk to them again. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
Okay. I'm sure you do. Go ahead.
So there's levels, right? There's got to be levels. Or I guess a better way to put it is there's a spectrum. Not everything is going to be an egregious offense,
right,
that requires, boundaries and levels of discussions and things like that. Me breaking Cass's window is probably one of those, dude, here's $200.
Yeah,
I'm
whatever.
sorry, man. It was an accident. I swung the fucking thing and it hit the thing. My bad, dude. It's over and it's done with. And I don't expect that to come up in 3 years if I kick the cat. I like your cat, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm not a cat person either. But let's talk about, a couple that's been together for 20 years and then one of them has an affair.
Yeah.
That's different than breaking a fucking window, right? And that is going to scar very deeply. And you have to go through the stages of grief before you can even start having this discussion. And then you have this, I believe that I've never experienced this, but I believe that there's going to be some trauma that you have to deal with. So there's, you said something when you were talking there. You said it's a process.
Yeah.
So my question to Alicia is, what's the process? Because I can tell you the process for taking a jet off and landing it. I can tell you the process for setting a goal and executing it. I can tell you processes that we talk about all the time, but I don't know the process for forgiveness.
That's a good question.
Yeah, and again, I think it's nuanced, right? I think that process is going to be a little bit different for everybody. Because if you go back to the, people that have been married for 20 years and one of them has an affair. So like Alicia and I were talking about before, we extend each other a lot of grace and a lot of benefit of the doubt. Well, when that trust is broken, it becomes a lot more difficult to extend grace and benefit of the doubt.
So what's the process? I mean, step one, identify the problem, right?
Yeah.
What's the root cause? And then?
Okay. So let's
You're the expert.
Yeah. So, right. It's not concrete like your jet, right? It's not
a little more subjective.
Yeah. A, B, C, D, because what happens is I'm sitting here thinking, depending on the person who was betrayed, what's their history?
Okay. Let's say that Katie cheats on me. Katie and I have been married 25 years. Katie has an affair and you have to psychoanalyze and help me move past this.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like it's your history, right? What are your values around betrayal? What are your values around, your marriage vows? Because, some people, it impacts people different. Not everybody has the same response around affairs, and affairs are not deal breakers in marriages. So there is that betrayal component. So it's a lot of, grief, right? That's a huge part of this. So it's moving through, loss and what do I have to, right? So part of forgiveness, a big part of it is actually grief. What have I lost that I have to move through to create something new? So something has to die. So there's probably a part of my marriage has died. Part of my idea around my marriage has died. Part of my trust in my partners died, right? So it's a lot of acceptance around this is where things are at. And then I think after having that acceptance around here's where things are at, it's a healing process, right? So what do I need to do? Do I need to go to counseling? Do I need to be having these ongoing conversations? Do we need to have atonement and reconciliation around what this looks like? How do we build our trust? Do I need to get a divorce? Are we staying married? And it's through that work and figuring out, like, personally what it is for you to, can I let go of what happened? Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, doesn't mean it was wrong, right? It's not, and we don't have to forget it, and we can set boundaries around it. But can I?
Well, that's a good segue into something I wanted to talk about. So keep going.
But can I let go of the fact that that person's behavior is triggering me to have my own behaviors towards them, right? That's putting up this kind of barrier, if you will, in our relationship. So it's like, can I let go of that hurt enough once it's healed? Because this stuff can take months to years. Like, it can take a long time to heal, but can I let go of it enough to go, all right, I don't have a lot of, sure, it's sad, it sucked, but I'm not triggered by this particular item anymore, if that makes sense. Like, there's not that raw emotional pain there.
Yeah, I think
I don't hate this other person anymore.
I don't know. I can't help but think that we're throwing around a bunch of, I don't know, ideas, or, like you said, platitudes.
Yeah.
We're talking about it abstractly and saying things like it depends, and
it is abstract.
Well,
it is
abstract. That's the thing, man. Is you want a ABCD process, and it doesn't exist for this, because everybody's going to respond to things differently, and the timeline that people are going to heal on, grieve on, all that. It's different for different people, right? And again, it depends on what's the nature of the hurt that's been given to you, right?
Well, and do you guys see people who get stuck in not letting go? Again, if we just shift it to letting go, do you have people in your lives that don't let go, that fester old shit that isn't even existing in their lives anymore?
Yeah,
that you're like, this is 10 years old. How are you still like letting this
old
fester?
Hurts.
Yeah. Do you know people like that?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, well, it doesn't fester necessarily, but when the topic comes up, that I have a reaction to that incident based on something that happened years ago. That, excuse me,
I know what you're getting at.
The discussions never happened to get past that, and the relationship either withered and died long ago. So it's just not worth it anymore. It has nothing to do with forgiveness.
Yeah.
And honestly, I moved on from it a long time ago, but occasionally it pops back up.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would say that's festering then, right?
Well, when it does pop back up, there's 2 or 3 days there where I'm
back in.
Yeah, it does. And the example that I'm talking about.
I do. I know exactly.
And I want to just keep it plain, and
that's fine. We'll keep it generic.
But
here, so I think what you're asking for is let's get a little more specificity about this concept of forgiveness, right? So
I think that's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say out of my notes that I thought was good is I want people to recognize that forgiveness isn't a luxury, right? So it's not some kind of magic spell that you get all of a sudden and then you can forgive. And it also doesn't erase the reality of the injury, right? Like, just because you forgive somebody, like what were we talking about before? Forgive and forget, right? Fuck that. I'm happy to forgive.
Well, yeah, that's what she said. It's like you don't have to forget it.
I'm happy to forgive. Don't ever fucking expect me to forget. You know? So because it's anytime somebody does something like that towards you, it's information, right? And those are data points. So it's not pretending that what happened didn't happen. That's not what forgiveness is about. And it doesn't mean it's going to hurt any less, right? Going through forgiveness, as you go through that healing process, it's not going to pull a veil over what happened. That's still there. And that's still always going to be there. So what you have to do is you have to be honest. You have to have an honest reckoning. And you have to have an honest reckoning with yourself. And that's what Alicia's getting at, right? And that's different for everybody, because you have to go into, what are my values around this? What are my values around my marriage? What are my values around infidelity, or whatever the case may be, right? So with that said, I think it would be important to talk about what forgiveness isn't, because I think that there's a lot of ideas out there, or a lot of, what's the word? I'm not misnomer, but misconceptions about what forgiveness is or not, right? So it's not weakness. it doesn't mean that you have to be spineless or that you're not going to get angry, right? It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry with somebody if they've hurt you. Like, that's a normal human response. Let me see here. I have this. I'll have you talk to this, Alicia, just because you could break this down. But in my notes, I have, it is a remarkable feat to be able to see past the inhumanity of the behavior and recognize the humanity of the person committing the act. Right? We're all fucking human. We all make mistakes, right? That may have been a really shitty thing you did, and it probably hurt me really badly. But we all do stupid shit sometimes, right? We're all, at the end of the day, we're all only human. We're all dealing with our own shit. And who knows how you got to that point. Understanding that doesn't mean you're a weak person. Affording that to somebody else or extending that to somebody else doesn't make you weak. It's actually a strength. And then this is a big one too. Both of these next two are, forgiveness isn't a subversion of justice. So sometimes people will focus on revenge. A lot of people think that there's no justice until they get their due, till they get that person back, right?
A pound of flesh.
Yeah, the reality is that those people suffer from the consequences of their own actions in one way or another, whether it's through the legal system or just having a shitty life or having shitty relationships or staying in that fucking trap and loop and then that dance with that person, or never recognizing the patterns in their life that put them in these positions and never breaking free of it. From one of the books I read, this guy quoted that many people find once justice is served, they don't feel any better. That the story hasn't ended for them because they haven't actually taken the steps to forgive, right? Because like Alicia was saying, something has to end for you to create a new normal. And if you're just holding on to old shit and not allowing it to end, you can't move to that place where you can't get to a place where you can create a new normal. So even when people get what they think is justice, a lot of times it doesn't lead to anything better because they still haven't forgiven. And forgiveness is what leads to a new beginning and is the only way out of the trap that the injury created. And then forgiveness is not forgetting. It doesn't mean that you forget the pain you suffered or pretend that didn't happen. In fact, a lot of times in order to forgive, I think you have to give voice to the violations or to the injustice that's been done to you. You've got to be able to say what it was, right? To have that conversation. You don't this is a good one for guys, right? You don't have to carry in silence. You're not a fucking martyr because you can compartmentalize and trap all this shit away inside and let it eat away at you for the next 20 years of your life. That's just pretending it didn't happen. So, and in some ways, it's courage over comfort, right? It's a leap of faith because you're not guaranteed of what the outcome's going to be. You're not guaranteed that things actually would get better. Like in your example, let's say Katie has an affair and you decide to nug it out and you forgive her. There's no guarantee she's not going to have another one.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that everything is going to work out for the better in the end, right? So in some ways, it's a leap of faith. And last but not least, dude, it's not fucking easy.
Of course.
Like everything we talk about is hard, right? These are hard things. How do you forgive somebody that never gave you the apology you were looking for? How do you forgive somebody that doesn't even recognize or acknowledge the pain or the suffering they caused you? That shows absolutely no fucking remorse.
Yeah.
Do they deserve that? It's not really about them. It's really about you, right?
Well, but that was the conversation. That was where we started. And we decided that none of that shit matters.
Yeah, it's not.
None of that shit matters. It's about, in going back to the example, between my ears, why should I forgive that egregious act?
Mm-hmm. So, because like, I think, and I actually do have a definition I can read off too, but, because like what Jason's saying, there's consequences in some ways of not, because, I mean, we can get into like chemical components that are releasing in your body if you're sitting in states of like rage or anger or depression. And again, it's like, if we ruminate and we keep ourselves trapped in the story and how this person's behavior is played, or this individual is a part of our story and how we define ourselves around it, it's like, what's your goal? Is your goal to be a content person? Is your goal to enjoy life? If so, is it effective to hold on to resentment? Because that's basically what forgiveness is, right? It's letting go of resentment. Does it benefit you to be in resentment? Does it benefit you to hold on to this? Like, how's it impacting other areas of your life? And that is what makes it complicated, right? And sometimes people don't have the skill set to move through things, or they are in so much pain they can't let go. They don't know how to let go. So it's kind of like, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to waste your time and energy letting somebody live in your head rent free? Or do you want to go enjoy your life and let go of that hook?
Because that's it. Yeah. They're in your head rent free at that point, right? When you can't let go of it. And here's some statistics that I found. So according to studies published in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine, people who practice forgiveness experience a 62% reduction in chronic pain, up to 30% decrease in anxiety and depression symptoms, and a 40% improvement in sleep quality. Research from Stanford's University Forgiveness Project indicates that forgiveness education and practice can reduce anger by up to 70% and increase optimism by up to 40% in participants. So when we talk about attitudes of gratitude, and all of those types of things, right? This plays a huge part in it. This idea and this concept to be able to forgive is a big part of that. And when you were talking before too about like, what are the steps? Again, it's nuance, right? But one of the books that I read, that I wrote this in my notes. So in a lot of ways, what do we always talk about with goals, right? Break them down into bite-sized chunks, right? Pick small things and then move on to the next bigger thing. So one thing that he said is, tell your story as long as you need to. That's step one. And then name the hurts until they're no longer as painful, right? So that's kind of step two. And then grant forgiveness when you're ready to let go of the past and that can't be changed. That's step three. And then step four is to either reconcile or release the relationship as you choose, right? So that's, if you want to break it down into steps. Now there's a lot that goes on in probably each of those steps, and somebody like her can help you figure all that shit out. Depending on previous history, your own personal stories, the own messaging that you've had growing up, things like that. But there's your 4-step process if you need a step-by-step process.
Say it again, step one, step two.
So step one that he talks about in the book is tell your story as long as you need to.
Okay.
And then step two is name your hurts until they no longer pierce your heart. Step three is grant forgiveness when you are ready to let go of a past that cannot be unchanged. And then step four is reconcile or release the relationship as you choose.
Okay. So I hear from all that, and this is me dumbing it down into Roscoe speak, is talk about it with someone. Whether it's a therapist, a pastor, a close friend, whatever it is, talk about it. Get it off your chest. Get it out there in the open. Because just like anything else that we've talked about in the past, you can't deal with it until you throw it on the table, right? And I mean, Katie and I do this all the time. If there's an issue, if there's something around the house needs to get fixed, or a big decision to be made, or she and I are having friction, whatever it is, throw it on the table. Because once it's out there, then you have to deal with it, right? It's like throwing the grenade in the room. Somebody's got to jump on the fucking thing, right? So get it out. Talk about it. Get some, just getting it out of your system a lot of times helps you exercise that demon.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this, and we talked about it in emotional regulation and all different kinds of things, is talk about it. Get it out of your system a little bit. And then you have to make a decision on whether or not there's value in trying to either reconcile or stay with that relationship. And that becomes a judgment call, I think, based on, your values, your ability to move forward with it, your ability to forget a little bit, because there are some things that you can't unsee. I'll give you some examples offline of some things that you just can't unsee.
Yeah.
And, the next time you see that person, that trigger is going to be pulled, and you can't help that. Because you cannot get that flash memory out of your brain. It's not like Men in Black where you can just get flashy thing to move on.
Well, you can. That involves different kind of therapy, but which we won't.
Are we going to talk about DARPA now?
No.
Oh, fuck.
Like,
okay. I have a lot of questions about DARPA.
Can I read this definition from the American Psychological Association? Because I feel like it fits in here perfect.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So forgiveness involves willfully putting aside feelings of resentment towards someone who's committed a wrong, been unfair or hurtful, or otherwise harmed you in some way. Forgiveness is not merely accepting what happened or ceasing to be angry. Rather, it involves a voluntary transformation of your feelings, attitudes, and behaviors so that you're no longer dominated by resentment and can express compassion, generosity, or light towards the person who wronged you.
Right. And so if we go back to what we've talked about on this podcast and all the skills that we've talked to, whether it's emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, all these different things, right? You may not have the skills to do some of these things, right? Mm-hmm. So when we go through this little 4-step thing that we were just talking about, get it off your chest. But dude, this is self-inspection, right? This is you looking inward and having an honest conversation with yourself about, why am I angry, right? What is it that this person did that makes me feel the way that I do? And what's at the root of that? Is it just that action? Is it a whole bunch of other shit that they did before this that piled up on top of it? Is it fucking shit that was done to me when I was a kid that I've never dealt with and I need to start to deal with? Is it messaging that I had that I'm not good enough? I mean, there's so many things that can go into why, whatever happened is hurting you to the level that it is. But the nice thing about doing that, right, is what we talk about on the podcast is now you can go to work on that stuff, right? Yeah. You can start to figure those pieces out for yourself. You can start to pull the onion back and get down into the layers and figure out what it is about all these things that you have control over and that you can change if you want to. And then as you go through that process, that's where you'll be able to understand, okay, now that I have a better sense of who I am and what I'm about and what these things are, is this relationship what I thought it was? Do I reconcile it? Or is it just time to let this one go? Because I'm not that person anymore, right?
Yeah, well, and I think, Roscoe, you brought up when you were talking about, I find somebody I can trust or whatever and share this story, right? That made me think of that shame resilience, right? Because sometimes interactions can be shaming, right? Did I do something wrong? Am I a bad person? Why did this happen? Mm-hmm. And again, this is why it gets nuanced and a little more complicated because of all of that. But what you said is so important, right? Sharing your story and finding people you trust to share your story with so you can get that support around it for sure.
Yeah.
Well, when you were just listing off some of those things, I was trying to correlate that to something that's a known process that I use all the time. And the way that you led that off, it made me think about what I said about, 20 minutes ago about step 1, identify the problem, right? And I mean, that even has layers like you're talking about. And an example would be something like this. I'm reading this really good book about Blackwater right now. Civilian mercenaries in the Iraq War, right? And there was some instances in there where good guys are blowed up, right? And let's say that one of our soldiers or a soldier is blown up and he's a double amputee, all right? This is a good example. When he's laying there in his bed, it'd be very easy for him to harbor resentment and blame to the people who made the IED. But if he starts peeling back that onion, then he might realize that he made a mistake. Or he might realize that the whole operation could have been wrong. The whole reason that we were there could have been incorrect.
Could have been flawed.
And it could have been those people over there just trying to defend themselves, So I think that that example lends a little bit of the step-by-step where, like you said, the self-inspection, you really have to debrief the scenario a little bit. You might have a part to play in this. Yeah. The example of Katie having an affair on Roscoe, I might have had something to do with that. I might have some blame that I have to share in that. Now, she committed the act. She could have, by the way, Katie didn't have an affair on me. I just want to make that clear. At least not that I know of.
We forgive you, Katie.
But this is an example only.
We never thought of that for 1 minute.
Yeah, we never thought about that.
But at the point of attack, she had a decision to make. And she chose a certain path, right? So that decision right there is, that's worth discussing. And that's worth trying to nug out a little bit. But when you peel it back and you go all the way back to, the root of it, the true root of it, like what got her to that decision point and made her choose which way she was going to go, there could have been something that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago that started her on that path, right? Maybe some doubt crept in, maybe some, I don't know. I'm kind of talking out of my ass right now, but
no, but I love where you're going actually. And you're really talking about moving from cognitive rigidity, especially that story you told with the Blackwater, right? Double amputee, to more cognitive flexibility. And even your example with an affair, right? Going from this is the problem to like, hey, the problem could have manifested, which research shows affairs most of them aren't just, it's not really about the physical component. Yeah. It's about emotional and connection and loneliness.
Yeah.
But, and this is like this skill, radical acceptance, which I don't know, we might have talked about that in here before, but it's this ability to accept what's outside of our control without judging it. These are the facts. This is what's happening. This is where we are. I'm going to accept where I'm at versus living in denial. And then from there, I can make decisions. So like what you're talking about, right? Like, okay, well, maybe here's her percentage of it. Here's my percentage of it. And we've got this laid out. We want to maintain our relationship. What do we need to do going forward? Right. Versus just sitting and the anger and the blame and the, and the pain, which of course that's going to be there for a little bit. But
okay, so we're working on a process here.
Yeah,
we're going to build it. So step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, find out the root cause of the problem.
Yeah,
and let's keep on going. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like we always talk about when it comes to identifying the problem and figuring out what the root cause is too. That can't just be projected outward.
Oh no!
Right?
No. That's where I said you might harbor some blame in this.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
When you walk it back far enough, you might go, "Oh fuck, dude, yeah, I kind of fuck. We should have talked about this 15 years ago, and maybe this didn't happen."
Yeah, and I'll throw this out there too because I know. So when I went through my only divorce, thankfully, when I went through my divorce, like fairness and justice are kind of, I don't know, it's not like a core value of mine, but like it's something I believe in, right? Like I believe in justice and I believe that there should be fairness and all these things, right? And I'm just bringing this up in case it resonates with anybody that maybe listen to the podcast. That idea of fairness kept me hung up for a long time in my process to forgive my ex. Partly because I didn't ever feel like I got an apology or any kind of recognition for the pain that I had to go through during that process. And I felt like I was continually being taken advantage of, which some of that was my fault because of the patterns that I had in my life prior to that. But I say all that just to say that if you're looking for fairness, fuck off. It doesn't, I mean, like it's not a just and it's not a fair world. You're not going to, if you're looking for fairness in this process, you're not going to find it. You just have to get over it. Like at some point, you just got to reconcile that and move forward.
Well, because we're dealing with individuals.
Yeah.
And so the concept of free will, as abstract as that might be, I mean, it's real, man.
Yeah.
And people are going to make decisions based on whatever they're going to make that decision based on. It could be impulse. It could be, a deeply rooted value that they have. It could be a number. It could be they got shit-faced and they just made a bad decision.
Yeah.
But I mean, even that, there's probably something underlying that brings that to the surface.
Well, and again, and I love this because for some reason, when you were talking about forgiveness, right, in my head, I think I interpret forgiveness as, and what I think other people interpret is letting the other person off the hook.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case because, like, again, right, somebody's shit-faced, they do something wrong. It's like, hey, look, I can let that go. But you and I need to have a conversation and I need to know, can you do better? Right? If we're going to have a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Can we talk about how this needs to move forward? So there still can be accountability. It's not letting the other person off the hook. And I was going to share this really quick about radical acceptance because, I mean, this kind of gets a little philosophical, but it's based on this notion that suffering comes not directly from pain, but from our attachment to the pain. And so it's like, what story does that pain play in our lives? And what, again, almost keeps us locked in a victim role with a perpetrator. So it's like that forgiveness is like, how do I let go of that dynamic that's unfolding and heal my pain around it, but not, not let that rule my life anymore, run my own decisions and emotions.
Yeah, but how do you get there? That's kind of goes back to the first question is, we're slowly starting to identify a process here. And I think that we were getting onto something there, but I think it's maybe a couple of steps ahead. There's something in between there where you identify the problem, you work it back and you find the root of the problem. Like, what really happened here? Where did this thing start? And then there's something that, there's got to be something that you have to do on your own to forgive yourself or the other person, doesn't matter. But there's got to be something in there, some kind of there's got to be some kind of, it's like working through the stages of grief. There's got to be something that happens in between here to get us to that point where we can say, okay, dude, like, I own it. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's just ownership.
I think it's acceptance.
Some of it is because, like, and I want the stages of grief aren't something we sit here and go, okay, I'm going to be angry today, and now I'm going to be in denial. Like, and it's not even linear, right? These are things that they have shown that people just move through, right? Somebody just didn't go, hey,
Right.
look, we are creating 5 stages, right? And it's the same process of, and I'm just going to jump into like the deeper end of this, right? So a lot of what I see.
Finally, 51 minutes in.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
Holy shit. So but a lot of what I see, right? Adult children with parents, right? Who did not have good upbringings, right? Who are caught in this dynamic of, why won't my parent listen to me? Why can't, why is this relationship like this? Why did this, or if they were abused or neglected, right? Sometimes you can't get to the root cause of it. You can't always dissect why people do what they do. And that's what that letting go is about. Can I let go of trying to put this in a box and figure it out? I can't fucking figure it out. I can't fix it. I can't figure it out. Can I
know what you're talking about.
Be willing, not willful, and hold on to it? Can I be willing to accept this is it. This is it, right? And can I grieve? Can I grieve the notion of my parents? Can I grieve the notion I had of my dreams around it, my hopes? I need to grieve. I need to let that stuff go. Do I need to go to therapy? Do I need to check my cognitions and my other stuff? Like, right, what other tools do I need to bring in to help me on this path? But
in Be One Change One language, what you're talking about is identify those things that you can control and control them, and everything else.
Amen.
You just can't do anything about it.
Amen.
That's we've said that from episode 1 is controlling. Well, but when you get to that point though, and it's really hard to do sometimes, because I think naturally we want to try to fix the problem, but then we realize in what you were just talking about, we realize that a lot of that stuff you have no control over. I can't control the weather. I can't control what this other person is thinking. To a degree, I can control my actions, and maybe their perception of me changes. But ultimately, I can't control any of that. Like a parent to a child, like in your example, you don't know what was going on with them to make them do the things that they did. And you can ask them, and maybe they're forthcoming, maybe they're not. But you don't have any control over that. It happened 30 years ago. And the only thing that you can control is your reaction and your response to that now. Right?
Yeah. So you're speaking about compassion, right? So, right, there's a skill, compassion. Can I apply compassion to this person? So again, it's not about forgiveness and judgment. It's just like, can I just sit here and go, that person was probably suffering too?
Yeah. Can I see
doing the best? Their
own humanity.
The best they were doing. Yeah. And then also being mindful, right? Can I track my thoughts, help correct my thoughts? Because a lot of our thoughts are just that. They're not fact, they're habits, they're thoughts. Our brain makes up a story. Can I track my thinking? Can I redirect my thinking? Right. And so then it takes that component, like that willpower of just like moving in that direction.
Well, yeah. And like Alicia was talking about, that building skill, controlling your thoughts, emotional regulation, right? Part of this process is that inward look, that own self-inspection, that's personal growth, right? And this is the stuff that if you do as this process of getting to a place of forgiveness and letting go, dude, you're going to be able to avoid some of the same pitfalls or traps that you fell into to get you into the place that you're in right now, right? Because you go through that process of personal growth. You don't run into, you don't fall back into the same patterns and make the same mistakes that you have in the past, right? We've talked about this on the podcast before too. Like in some ways, my first divorce was such a blessing because I learned so much about myself in that process. I learned so many things about my family of origin and the roles that I had consistently played in life, especially with women in my life and the type of women that I had relationships with, and understanding those things prevented me from falling back into that same trap.
So you found upside in it.
Yeah, 15 years later, I probably would be getting divorced again if I had married the same person again.
Well, hold up. I want to take that. I want to take your example right there. And I want to throw it back to Alicia. And so there's dopamine and oxytocin. Those are the good chemicals. And then there's cortisol. And what's the other one? That's the negative one. There's 4. 2 of them are good. 2 of them are bad. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And then there's another one. I can't remember what it is that causes like anxiety and fear and shit.
Yeah, I can't think of that one either. But
okay. So irregardless, I know that's not a word.
It is now, actually.
I made it a word. I can say it.
It's officially a word.
Yes, I can say it and spell it and use it in a sentence. So what you made a comment earlier about, harboring in that stress. And we were talking about the chemicals in the brain and shit like that, right? So if you want to move from the cortisol side of the brain and move into the good stuff, right? How do you do that? And I think you were getting there, right? Is find some upside in it. Right. Try to find that silver lining. Like, this is a really terrible, shitty situation. Right. And we all have lists of people that we know that have gone through shit like this. I've got a really good example that I don't want to talk about. And I know that sucks for a podcast, but I don't want that person to be reminded of the situation, because I think that person has moved on and it's very good and healthy for that person. But it took a long time to get there, and it took a lot of talking about it and getting it out with, people who had that person's back, people who were in his corner, in his circle, his very close circle. And eventually he found the upside. Yeah. And he goes, "Oh, what there's a chapter in my book, Work Hard, Don't Suck. You can still get it for Christmas." Shit, this is coming out after Christmas. Damn it. You can get it for next Christmas. Life will continue to present you the opportunity to learn a lesson until you learn a lesson. So once you get burned enough times, then you learn to see the upside. You learn that lesson and you go, wait a minute. Okay, full stop. What am I trying? What's life trying to teach me here? Life's trying to teach me that I don't need to be around this type of person. I need to be around this type of person.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, and so I'm a very logical person. We were talking about this the other day too. Like, like silver lining and upside. True. But dude, you don't see it when you're in it, right? Like, because again, when you're going through the process of this and you're being introspective and you're figuring out all this shit about yourself, and you're just like, holy my God, man, like I've got so much fucking work to do. It doesn't feel like silver lining and upside, right? But there is silver lining and upside in the fact that if you do the work and you start to develop some skills and you start to recognize some patterns that you've had in your life that you may not even be aware of, it will prevent you from doing exactly what you just said, falling back into that same trap, right? Fucking running in that same circle and then wondering, how did I end up here again? Right.
But in your example, right, you might not have realized it at the time. Yeah. But when you met her, you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you met her, you go, whoa, this is way different.
And that's what I'm saying.
Now it highlights itself, right?
And that's why I'm saying there's truth to that. My point is, I just want people to recognize that when you're in it, you don't see it. But it's the fruit of what you do in it. It's doing the work in the process to improve yourself, where you see it on the backside.
This is the importance, I think, of talking to other people about it, though, right? Is you might not see it because you got blinders on, man. You were just burned, and you've got that anger, and it's masking your ability to move through and see the upside or see the other side of it, see the potential of the good side of this, right? But if you have a good circle of people and you talk about it and you listen, because these third-party people that we talk about, they have a different perspective on it. They just kind of see it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's facts. It's not emotionally, those people may not be emotionally tied to it like
Right.
you are. And emotions, it's like when you go car shopping, right? You don't make an emotional decision because the car looks good. You do a mechanical inspection on it, and you get down to quantifiable facts about the automobile. And that movie Heat from the 1990s, Robert De Niro's character says something that I love this quote. I live by it all the time, is never fall in love with something you can't walk away from in 30 seconds. What he's saying is remove the emotion from it and look at it objectively for what it is, right? And talking to people about your scenario or about your wrongdoing or your egregious act that happened to you, whatever it is, those people can offer you that objective look and go, yeah, dude, I mean, this is fucked up, but you also played a part here.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And really that the silver lining and the upside of it all is if you go through this process and you do the work, you build skills, you learn how to forgive and let go, whether you reconcile or walk away, it doesn't really matter. If you do those things though, like at the end of the day, you're going to be in a better place. You're going to be healthier emotionally and probably physically, because you're not carrying around that anger and resentment, right? You're going to be in a place where you can build healthier relationships in the future, right? Because you've learned these things about yourself.
That's a big key right there.
Yeah. And you're not going to fall into the same traps. And you're also going to be in a place where you've done a ton of personal growth, right? You built skills and recognize some things about yourself and fix some things about yourself and gone to task. And, that's momentum that leads into that whole journey that, you and I and Alicia, for that matter, have all been on for a very long time. So,
yeah, well, and it's healing the pain ultimately, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when we talk about like skills or how do we move through it too, it's, asking that question, how does it serve you to stay resentful? How does it serve you to stay in the pain?
That's
how
a
does
good way
it
to look
serve
at it.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does. Some people might go, well, it doesn't. It's like, but it does. We don't always like the self-inspection. We don't always want to look at it. But right, how does it feed into your story of yourself? Because sometimes those deeper wounds feed into that story. So exercises people can do. So EMDR, that's not an exercise. It's a therapy. It's so good. It's the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It can really help take the wounded memory and disconnect that negative cognition, that negative belief we have ourselves around it, and really, if heal it anyway. I won't get into the details of that, but there's another skill called effective rethinking and paired relaxation, where we can actually think about the situation that unfolded and all the negative thoughts we have about it, but then we can also think about other ways to look at it, right? So actually make a list of alternative ways of looking at this that are more effective. And then we can think about the situation. And as we think about the situation, just take a deep breath in. And as we exhale, say one of those positive statements, right? Those alternative statements that we can think about the situation. It doesn't have to be sunshine and rainbows. It might be, I can handle this, right? I can work on letting go of it, right? I can work on some compassion for myself and this person. But it starts to kind of like disconnect that hot charge between the situation and our emotions. And it just helps to make that shift in our brains a little bit better.
What if you can't get there?
Well, then
what if I come in and I spend 10 sessions with Alicia and I just can't get there? Like I don't know. It's not like I'm going to go, grab my M4 and start capping people. I'm not going to go. I'm not violent towards these people, but emotionally, I just can't get there. What do you do then?
Well, so as a therapist, I would be looking at your history. I would be looking at like the stories of your life and the things that might be holding this in place. Because sometimes it is really deeper wounding and childhood wounding that's holding it there. Again, how does it serve you to hold on to it? You know what? If you want to fucking hold on to it, hold on to it. Like that's your choice. Like that's your choice. If that's how you want to live your life, like go with God, go do you, and you can totally do that. And
right. Well, maybe I don't want to. I just can't.
Well,
because there's a big difference between want and can't. Like I try. I'm really trying to do this, but I just can't get like it pops up and I go right back to that place.
Yeah.
Something like that.
As a therapist, I would say time, or I would actually move into like an actual trauma therapy, right? Time and an actual trauma therapy, because there's something more in there, and there's other things that in therapy could happen too. But
that's funny because I had it written down right here. Is this a form of trauma?
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
And like Alicia's saying, it can be deeper rooted trauma.
Right. And as we're talking about some of these things, I mean, I was just thinking about the way that we deal with trauma.
Yeah.
And the way we think about trauma. And it's
that, Alicia.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing for me to sit on my back porch with a glass of Jack Daniels and think about these things. It's quite another, I think, to go in and talk to a professional about it, because I'm a moron and I don't know the steps. I don't know these things that I'm supposed to be thinking and these positive statements that I'm supposed to be saying and stuff, but you do. And you're supposed to be the one to help coach me through this, right?
Well, so let me kind of round that out a little bit. Therapy with me, at least, it's always self-led. It's always self-determined. And I meet clients where they're at. So I won't ever tell you how you're supposed to feel. I might give you a different point of view on
alternatives,
something. Yeah, but I won't sit there and go, well, you should be feeling this way or you should be feeling that way. It's a lot of validation of like, it makes a lot, right? Let's connect dots. Let's see where this is coming from. There's so many people who come into therapy and drop right out because they are not ready to look at stuff. And we can think of trauma. It's kind of become a buzzword, but it's really anytime our nervous system gets emotionally overwhelmed, right? So think of a little kid, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. Parent just loses their shit, yells at the kid, or maybe the kid's doing like a little speech at school and they screw up a word and the classroom laughs at them. Their brain might go, oh my God, that was dangerous. That was scary. People are laughing at us. I just got yelled at. Well, we might not consider it like a big trauma, like a car accident or being assaulted. It's like a little trauma because the brain's like, ooh, that wasn't safe. That was a disconnect. And we're hardwired for connection, especially a little kid needs that caregiver, right? So our brains go, well, that wasn't okay. We're going to store that away and let's see how many more times that happened. Or maybe now as an adult, I don't like giving speeches and I have a lot of anxiety because of that. I can't trace it back. Maybe I've forgotten. My brain doesn't forget. My body doesn't forget. So we can consider like an affair, right? Like a betrayal or even a divorce, right? Like the loss of our family, that separation, all that pain that we might even feel somewhat responsible for. It's like, that could be considered slightly traumatic. It's a big thing to go through. So
no, I think we're scratching it. We're scratching it at getting down to it.
Yeah.
When we start talking about it as when you just throw a blanket over it and say, hey guys, just go forgive everybody and, and life will be hunky dory.
And that's what
there's
we're saying.
A lot more to it.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. And like Alicia's saying too, right? It could be, some of it can be tied to trauma that you're not even aware of. I mean, you want to talk about the parts work you do. I can't explain it. You might be able to, but like there's some people that have different parts, and depending on what part is present at the time, they're not going to remember the trauma that happened with another part.
It's like split personality shit.
It's not.
Well, let me.
Yeah, I didn't say that very well.
Yeah. Is it Roscoe or the Beast showing up?
So we all have parts. We use this language all the time. It's okay. We use the language all the time, right? A part of me wants to do this. Part of me wants to do that. Part of me doesn't want to do that. The people who have experienced, I mean, the healthy system has parts that are integrated, right? Like probably the person who shows up to teach your sim classes might be the person who's different than drinking a Jack and Coke out by the fire, right? You probably have your sim instructor hat on, whatever, right? Or the dad who's, hey, you know what? You guys need to go on this way.
Different roles we play in life.
The guy that puts the hashtag, I fucking pay for all this shit.
That's right.
Yeah. So you can think of parts like that, different hats, different roles we play. But people who have like unhealed trauma, sometimes those parts are a little feisty. And so let's just say we're pissed at somebody, we're really angry or resentful. That might be a part of us that's really consuming us. That like going back to your example, what if I can't let go? There's a part of you. There's a part of you that does not want to let go for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It is not ready to, and we could actually explore that part of you. Let's talk about that. Let's get into that part and figure out why that is.
Well, let's talk about it. Where would you go with that with this person? Is this something that person can do on their own?
There could definitely. I mean, it's really no different than self-inspection. It's a little more nuanced than that. Like you can get a book and read about it, but it's sometimes it would depend, right? How strong is your part, right? Because it might be a really strong protector part, and so that I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there part is probably protecting something much more vulnerable. So what is the messaging you've had around being vulnerable? What is that wounded part that it's protecting? And and then it just takes time doing work to get in there to get to that part. And some people that can take months and years.
Well, there's part of me wants to go back to my childhood hometown and drag a couple of people out into the street and beat them with rocks for the shit that they did to me when I was younger. But the other part of me goes, yeah, but if I did that, I'd go to jail and I got mouths to feed. So I don't do that. I choose to not go back and drag them out into the street and beat the shit out of them. Right. As much as I would like to. And you made a comment earlier about how oftentimes it doesn't make you feel better. Oh, that would make me feel so much better. Yeah. Because I would take pictures of it and I'd put it on Facebook and I'd laugh at them and I'd be like, hey, you remember that time that you
would make you feel better because you'd be in jail.
Well, but that's the part. That's the other part that says, Roscoe, don't.
In the moment,
it
might feel good, but
that's
the long-term effect, it is.
That's a good example of a part of you that hasn't quite let go of an experience that you had for whatever reason. And the question would become is, how does it serve that part of you to hold on to that memory to that extent with that energy and emotion behind it? Because that part of you, just that, and maybe that part of you is 20% of, right? Just 20% of you, but still it holds on to that memory comes up, that thought comes up and everything. Like,
we're an hour and 12 minutes in and we're getting to it. It doesn't serve me. Well, it doesn't serve anything positive, I should say. But it is a fun thought exercise sometimes.
Does it give you the feeling of power, control? Makes you feel not helpless?
I think it just maybe it liberates me to a degree. Maybe it's quid pro quo. Maybe it's they need to get what they deserve. Maybe it's vengeance, like you said. Who knows?
So there's a core belief behind that for you, though, whether it's about yourself or with them.
I'm getting therapied here.
So you are.
Yes.
Sign the proper
live on the Be One Change One podcast. Let's go gets fixed.
He is not technically getting therapy, but this is a great example, though, right? Because there is probably some negative belief of like, well, I can one up them, or I have control, or I'm not helpless. I have power, right? I have power over, and I'm guessing that part of you is a very young part. I'm guessing it's not adult Roscoe.
No, it's. I think really it comes down to you did me wrong, so I'm going to do you wrong back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up to be a different person than you knew back then, and this person is way better than that person. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you that. That's probably a lot.
And there's the forgiveness, right? Because there's another part of you that probably realizes.
So
maybe
I can forgive them and beat them the shit with a rock.
No. It's not damn it. That. It's about you not having to go back and show them shit. It doesn't. Who gives a shit what they think? Who cares? That's the forgiveness piece. They don't need to live rent free with that part of you.
Who the fuck cares?
It's letting go of that. I don't.
What does their opinion matter anyway?
I don't care about what you think
of
me anymore.
It doesn't. Like she said, does it serve you? No, it doesn't serve me at all. Doesn't serve me at all.
There's a part of you that gets that.
But it doesn't. Would be fun. It'd be fun to see the look on their face. Hey, you remember me? You haven't seen me in 30 years. Here's a blunt object to the side of your right temple.
Yeah, but there's that, right? But there it is, though, right? That's 30 years.
Yeah.
Right? 30 years potentially that you can be holding on to something, and it's not there every day, but it comes up every once in a while. And for what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say it doesn't mean that their behavior is awful and they're not people you'd want to be friends with. And it's funny because it is though. It's about letting go of that energy surrounding that. But Harriet Lerner, who's this really amazing author, she talks about how we don't even have to forgive people 100%. It's this really wild concept to me. But maybe you forgive people 90%. I'm going to let go of the majority of whatever I felt like this was that you wronged, how you wronged me. But there might be a little tiny bit of it. I just can't let go of it. And that's okay if that's what works for you.
All right.
It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
That's good.
It can be a percentage.
And the irony of the whole thing is using that example of going back to childhood and digging some of that shit up. the irony is all of those people they're probably good people. I don't know them. I mean, how many people do I keep in touch with from high school?
Yeah.
0, right? They're probably all good people. They have families, they have kids, they go to church on Sunday, they work hard and they contribute to society, and they're probably good people. But back then, there was some fuckery going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to go out and drag out that person into the driveway and beat them with heavy mining equipment, it's not the same person.
That's true too.
It's not the same person, right?
That's true too.
So I don't know. We're starting to talk in circles a little bit, but that last little bit, that was really good about, does it serve you?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't, but who knows?
Yeah. That's a great way to frame it. And again, it doesn't mean you forget, right? Just because you forgive doesn't mean you forget the injustice. You forget, that person did that thing, that behavior, that hurt that it did inflict upon you. You don't have to forget that stuff, because that informs you on whether or not you want to have a relationship with that person. And if you're going to have a relationship with that person, what are the appropriate boundaries to set? So,
yeah, and I think there's probably an element in here too of like going through this process of forgiveness and getting in touch with your inner self or whatever. What does that serve? Because it just might not be even worth it to go through that process. I have an example that, I'm kind of going through right now, to where I look at it and I go, it's just not worth even putting the energy to it. It pops up about every year or so, and whatever, I deal with it for a day and then I move on. And it's not like, oh, don't worry, dude, I forgive you for it. Who cares? Right. Because it's gotten to the point where it just doesn't matter.
No, I think really, like, I think what I'm interpreting, what we're talking about here, is really those really deeper, painful things that kind of get drug on through our life. And it's like, how do we reconcile it? How do we make sense of it versus letting it eat us up or consume our time when it
doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, it really just doesn't deserve it
Well,
anymore.
and at one point it may have been that, but over time and
and what you're saying too, though, brother, is, hey, there's this one thing that it comes up every year, but you've already let it go. Because if you hadn't, then you wouldn't be sitting across the table from me going, it doesn't fucking matter.
Right. But there was no process. There was no, I didn't sit in my room and dwell on this.
Well, and again, not all these things are going to be super deep, right?
Yeah. It was like eroding a beach over time. The Colorado cutting through the Grand Canyon, man, just over time it happens.
Yeah, I'm going to quote this, and I'm probably going to butcher it, and I think it was Jay-Z. I totally heard this from somewhere.
I got 99 problems in a, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's like, I don't want you to starve. I just don't want you to eat at my table. And I love that, because it's like, that to me, that's kind of what forgiveness is. Like, I can see you. I can walk back. You see, like, I don't have really an emotional connection to you. I might not have liked what you did, but it's not consuming me. I don't think about it every day. I can see you, and I might go, yeah, I really don't like the behaviors you have, and I'm never going to extend myself or be your friend, but it doesn't mean I don't want, like, I don't even have energy to, like, not wish you a good life, right? Like, just go live your life, go eat. I don't want you not to eat. I just don't want you doing it in my area, at my table, but I don't even have energy to
I don't even put any energy towards it at all.
Yeah, like
no, I can relate to that.
Yeah, it's just more like, you're not
on a human level, I wish you well. I don't harbor any. Well, I don't. It's not that I even want to harbor ill will. I don't wish ill will on you. In fact, I hope you get well, and I hope you do better.
Yeah, it's just go live your life.
But you can't be part of my circle.
Yeah.
Well, put it in P1, change one speak. Right. Control. You can control. Choose your circle wisely.
Yeah.
And if people need to get kicked out of the circle, they get kicked out of the circle.
Yeah. They don't need to be there.
You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
Choose wisely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, forgiveness is fucking
complicated.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Good shit. That also might be the first time that Jay-Z was dropped on the B1 Change One. So
badass.
Well, I hope I didn't ruin it for any Jay-Z fans.
Add that to the first column over here. First time for everything, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Next, Alicia's going to wrap off some Eminem for us.
She could do that too.
I don't know.
It's one of the things I love about you.
I was just getting ready to, but I'm not going to.
No, please. Please do.
Have him do it. He's
come off with some mom spaghetti or some shit.
That's probably the only one I can come off.
I'm a good Eminem fan. I like Eminem.
I love him. I wish he would write. I wish he'd do an autobiography. I think he's incredible.
Yeah.
He's gone through some shit. Like he's a recovering addict.
Yeah.
And he's cleaned himself.
He's a recovering a lot of things.
Yeah. And I think he's cleaned himself up, and
Yeah. Good shit. Well, we got seriously off topic there for 69 seconds.
That's okay.
What do you got, man?
I got Be the Change.
All right. Well, then be the one. Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website, and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.